Johnson later explained that it felt as if the success he had wanted and worked for was happening around him, but not to him. But this is where his story takes an unexpected turn. Instead of continuing to chase a football career that was no longer working, Johnson returned to something he already knew. Wrestling had always been part of his family, and in 1996 he began pursuing it seriously. He first wrestled under the name Flex Cavana in the United States Wrestling Association. Later that year, he signed with the World Wrestling Federation and debuted as Rocky Maivia, a name connected to both his father and grandfather. At first, the Rocky Maivia character did not connect with audiences the way the company expected. But Johnson adapted. Welcome to Xfinity Evolution, where history comes alive, and legends are reborn. In 1995, Dwayne Johnson was 22 years old, and his biggest dream had nothing to do with Hollywood or professional wrestling. He wanted to become an NFL football player. After playing college football at the University of Miami, Johnson believed professional football was still within reach. But injuries and fierce competition ended that dream before it really began. He went to Canada to play for the Calgary Stampeders, hoping to prove himself. Instead, after only a short time on the team's practice roster, he was released. On the way back, Johnson checked his wallet and realized he had only $7 left. That moment would become one of the lowest points of his life, but years later, he would look back at those $7 very differently. Dwayne Johnson had grown up surrounded by professional wrestling. His father, Rocky Johnson, was a wrestler, and his grandfather, Peter Maivia, was also part of the wrestling world. But Dwayne's own ambition was focused on football. At the University of Miami, he played defensive tackle and was part of a team that won a national championship. For him, football wasn't simply a sport. It represented a future. He imagined making it to the NFL, earning enough money to help his family, and building the career he had been working toward for years. But professional sports can be brutally unforgiving. Johnson suffered injuries during his football career, and competition for playing time was intense. After college, no NFL team selected him in the draft. Instead of giving up immediately, he accepted an opportunity with the Calgary Stampeders of the Canadian Football League in 1995. Calgary moved him from defensive tackle to linebacker and placed him on the practice roster. For a young player still chasing the NFL dream, it was another opportunity to stay in the game. Then came the decision that changed everything. Johnson was released from the Stampeders' practice roster after roughly 2 months. He had spent years imagining himself as a professional football star, and suddenly that path appeared to be over. Johnson later described the moment as a defining low point. While traveling back toward Miami, he looked at what he had left financially and discovered that his wallet contained a $5 bill, a $1 bill, and some change. In his own recollection, the total was $7. $7 sounds like a small detail, but for Johnson it represented something much bigger. It was the distance between the life he expected and the reality he was facing. At the same time, another football player he knew, Warren Sapp, was moving toward the NFL and a much bigger career. Johnson later explained that it felt as if the success he had wanted and worked for was happening around him, but not to him. But this is where his story takes an unexpected turn. Instead of continuing to chase a football career that was no longer working, Johnson returned to something he already knew. Wrestling had always been part of his family, and in 1996 he began pursuing it seriously. He first wrestled under the name Flex Cavana in the United States Wrestling Association. Later that year, he signed with the World Wrestling Federation and debuted as Rocky Maivia, a name connected to both his father and grandfather. At first, the Rocky Maivia character did not connect with audiences the way the company expected. But Johnson adapted. Instead of staying trapped inside an unsuccessful character, he changed his approach. In 1997, he became The Rock, developing a much more confident and charismatic personality. His ability to speak, entertain, and connect with an audience transformed his career. What began as a second choice after football gradually became a new path toward global fame. The important part is that Johnson didn't simply replace one dream with another overnight. He used the skills he had developed through football, training, competition, discipline, and performing under pressure, and carried them into wrestling. The failure of one career became preparation for the next. By the late 1990s, The Rock had become one of professional wrestling's biggest stars. His popularity opened another door, Hollywood. His first major film appearance came in The Mummy Returns in 2001, followed by his leading role in The Scorpion King in 2002. That transition eventually turned him from a wrestling superstar into one of the most recognizable entertainers in the world. And the $7 story never disappeared. In fact, Johnson eventually used the phrase, $7, as part of his business identity, including the production company $7 Productions. The number became a reminder of where he had been, rather than a symbol of what he lacked. Years after cutting Johnson from the Calgary roster, Coach Wally Bono was still someone Johnson spoke about with gratitude. In 2014, Johnson publicly described the $7 in his pocket as a defining low point, but also said the experience motivated him. In later comments, he described his failed football dream as something that ultimately redirected his life. The lesson of Dwayne Johnson's story isn't that every failure automatically leads to success. It doesn't. His story is more complicated than that. He had opportunities, faced setbacks, changed direction, and repeatedly worked to build something new. The $7 didn't make him successful. What mattered was what he did after discovering he had them. If you want to understand how history is unfolding before our eyes, don't miss what comes next. Revisit Xfinity Evolution for deeper insights and powerful stories. Stay informed, stay curious, and join us again on Xfinity Evolution, where the world's biggest events come into focus.